Right, are you ready with your next witness then, Mr. Rossi? Yes, I am, Your Honor. I'm going to call Jerry Holeman. And you know what time it is? Well, for you who have been following this, you know what's going on. Hold on for a second. Dun, dun, dun. Dun, 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 dun. Every time Jerry Holeman is here, his third cousin by inbred marriage, Arthur Holeman, will do the reading. Everybody say hello to A.Holeman. A.Holeman. I'm sorry, George. I'm looking for Trooper Holeman, who, you know, is not back from lunch or something. We're trying to figure out where he is. I'd rather call him first. And Judge, he's back from lunch. I think he's back in our office. I didn't know he was going to be called first. Okay. So he's not gone. He's just downstairs. Blah, 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 blah. Trooper Jerry Holeman, Your Honor. Witness sworn. May I? Yes. Tell us your name. Jerry Holeman. Holeman. Thank you, Trooper. And who do you work for? Indiana State Police. I don't know his voice. I just imagine that's about close. Okay, and you were here yesterday, and when we went through all this, you're one of the lead investigators in this case. Is that right? Yes. Okay, and are you familiar with Rick Allen's detention circumstances, or have you been familiarized with them over the past 18 months or so? Yes. Detention circumstances. Yes. Where he's been held, what the circumstances where he's being held, where he's been transported to, those kind of things. Yes. And is that related to his circumstances at the White County Jail initially? Carroll County, White County. I'm sorry, Carroll County. Westville. White County, Westville. And then Wabash. Okay, all of those, right? Yes. All right. And do you acknowledge, or is it accurate to say that some of his conduct while he's been detained has been a part of this ongoing investigation in this case? His conduct? Yeah. The things he's saying, the things he's doing, the way he's acting. Statement that is made? All those kind of things. Are you asking about statements that he's made? Yeah. Well, and the way he acted for? Yes. Okay. And have you assigned officers in the course of your investigation to, I guess, investigate, for lack of a better word, the circumstances regarding his detention at Westville? I've assigned them to monitor his phone calls. Okay. And tell us who those officers are. The main one is Trooper Brian Harshman. All right. At some point early on, Detective Vito was involved in that, but mostly the documentation and investigation of it is going to be through Brian Harshman. Okay. I think I also, where at some point, Investigator Mullin from the prosecutor's office was doing some interviews up at Westville as well. Am I correct about that? Yes. Steve Mullin, Rich Davies, myself, and Brian Harshman, I believe, were the only ones who went up there and interviewed corrections officers and or inmates. And was it that first prompted you to either send someone up there to do some interviews or conduct some interviews yourself? Can't remember exactly the date and time, but we received information that he had made some confessions, so that after that we subpoenaed records, any other records that may indicate that any audio, video, written statements, or anything like that, and received information from the prison. And we were able to review the documentation and find out that he had confessed not only his wife, mother, correction officers, and inmate companions, So we got that documentation, reviewed it, found out who we needed to interview, and interviewed them. All right. Very good. Thank you for that. So who was it that first contacted you to communicate these issues to either you or your staff? No one contacted us. We were monitoring his phone calls, and once he made the first couple of confessions, at some point after that, we decided to subpoena any other records that the prison might have had, and they sent those to us. Nobody from the prison contacted us. Hey. John Yerks! Hey! Hey! If you haven't seen, every time Holeman is the one testifying, Arthur Holeman shows up. Okay, so you were actually monitoring his phone calls as a part of your investigation before any of this even occurred, these statements? Yes! That was a formal part of your investigation. You set that up so that you could do that while he was there. Yes! All right. And I'm assuming, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm trying to kind of get to the point, that you did that through GTL, the GTL service. I'm so... Oh, if Mrs. K. Grift, if your thought is around, this is not the right mask. Oh. The GTL service. I believe that's the company's name, yes. Okay. And did you reach out to the prison officials to get the information to communicate with GTL? I did not. Okay. I don't know who. Did one of your staff members? I don't know who did, but somebody did, yes. All right. And so basically you were using GTL as your conduit for essentially surveilling his communications to the outside. We were monitoring his phone calls, yes. Okay. How is that you know whether or not those phone calls would be phone calls he would have had with his lawyers, other than just hearing his lawyer's voice? Right. Well, the prison has it set up that those don't go into GTL. So those, we don't get any communications between him and his attorneys. I don't know how they do it, but I've never listened to any conversation between him and any of his attorneys. Let's give it a whirl. Okay, did you listen to have somebody on your staff, or you listen to these calls like on a weekly basis, or is this almost like in real time? Help me with how that works. Weekly, maybe a little more frequent than that, but then my view of this is that you got some officer with a pair of headphones on, sitting in an office somewhere like, okay, now I got to go through a week's worth of phone calls. And you sit down and you kind of knock them off in bulk. Is that an unreasonable view or an incorrect view, or what's inaccurate view of what's happening? No, I would agree with that's a pretty accurate statement. Probably maybe a little less or more, give or take. And did you actually listen to those calls? I mean, as a matter of routine? No. So is it Officer Harshman that was doing that? Yes, Trooper or Detective Harshman was. Okay. Primarily, there was other people that were helping, but he's primarily the one that did all the documentation of the phone calls of interest. And so I'm assuming when you got these phone calls and you're listening to them, and then if you hear something that's of significance, such as these calls to his family, you then followed up with the prison, right? Not necessarily me personally. I did a few. Your staff? Somebody would, yes. Okay, and one of the things you did was you went out and got subpoenas and rounded up more information about the circumstances at the prison above and beyond the phone calls. Correct. And what was that information? What I told you earlier was any audio, videotape movements, statements from the prison, documentation from the corrections officer that were conducted as self-ending watch, door, I think they called them door sheets or logs that they were keeping corrections officer. At some point it switched. They did use prisoners as companion program. But I think after they started making the confessions, they switched and no longer allowed the prisoners to do that, and they have corrections officers, so we got all those logs. How fucking convenient, right? How fucking convenient. Get the prisoners there, who may or may not have been Odinists, together with staff who were also Odinists, and as soon as they made sure everybody involved that Rick Allen was in an active psychosis, let's switch to only prison logs. Okay, what about any information from the warden himself? I can't remember if that came in the first subpoena or later, but yeah, we did get some information where he wrote a letter. Okay, there. To the warden. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. A letter to the warden! What about with internal affairs? Any information that you got from them? Not to my knowledge. So once you received this information, did you continue to request information to kind of continue to get updated information as you stayed at the prison? That's a kind of, let me withdraw that question. That's kind of a compound question. Did you then routinely go through this same process to keep getting the most updated information regarding his detention circumstances? As far as the phone calls, we continue to monitor them. We still would get information if there was any, I believe, yes. I think the answer would be yes. We did continue to get information. And maybe a simple question, I guess. I'm just thinking now is, when's the last time you asked for this information? I'm not sure exactly when we asked for the updated information. Because I get phone calls pretty routinely through the discovery dumps, but the written stuff, not so much. Yeah, I don't think we've received any or asked for any written. No, this must be an answer here. Yeah, I don't think we had received or asked for any written. I may be mistaken, but to my knowledge, I don't think we got any more written reports. Okay, since it's been at Wabash Valley. I don't think we have, no. Okay, do you believe that you required all of those when he was at Westville? All of the log sheets and companion reports and all that? Up to the point when we got the subpoena, I don't think we re-subpoenaed or asked for any more information to my knowledge. Have you ever listened to any of those phone calls yourself? Yes. Did you listen to any phone calls, let's say, between December of 2022 and March 1st of 2023? The first 6 or 7, 5 or 6 months he was there? I believe I listened to a few, yes. Okay. Did you hear him on any of those phone calls assert his innocence? I did not, no. What a load of bullshit. Okay, have you ever read any reports where he asserted his innocence? No! Okay, you interviewed him twice before you arrested him, right? Once! I just interviewed him once. Okay, there were 2 interviews with law enforcement. Correct! Right. And he asserted his innocence in both of those. Yes! Okay, and have you listened to any of the phone calls from, let's say, August 1st of 2023 while he was at Westville until he was transported in December of 2023? Yes! And did you hear him assert his innocence in any of those phone calls? No! I would not listen to the calls on a daily basis. I would just get the ones sent to me that I should listen to. And those are the ones that were of interest to you in terms of being incriminating, right? Yes, sir. So you were filtering just those phone calls through your staff. Correct. Okay, and so at some point, did you start, I'll say directing, that might be a hard kind of aggressive word, but directing some of your investigators to go to Westville to collect information about these phone calls and log sheets and things of that nature? I don't think I directed anybody. I just said we had some information that we needed to go conduct interviews, and we just formulated a game plan. I know one day I went up with Brian Harshman, and I know Rich Davis, Steve Mullin went up. I may have went up by myself one day, but yeah. Remember the prior witness who had everything, every piece of information? She only remembers one. One. None of these others. So you went up to the prison and started an interview with guards and inmates, right? Correct. And those were people, the inmates were people that were assigned to him. Yes. And the guards were people that were specifically assigned to his cell. Yes. And you were recovering information from them that anything that had to do with any incriminating statements he made, right? Yes. I read those, they're on transcribed form, right? Yes, they are. And those were given to the defense as a normal part of the discovery process, right? I believe so, yes. I've read those transcripts. Do you believe that you ever asked any one of those inmates if they ever heard him assert his innocence during their time with him? I don't know if I asked, but I think that some of the guards may have said that he said he was innocent. Okay, I'm going to ask the same. I asked about inmates. I'm not trying to confuse you. Yes. The question was, did you ever ask any of those inmates if he said anything other than some of these incriminating statements? I don't recall. Okay, same question with the guards. I don't recall. I have to look at the transcripts, review. They're pretty short transcripts when I looked at them. The interviews, in my mind, were pretty quick. Right. Kind of right to the point. Did he say this? Do you recall that kind of approach? I would agree with that. That's accurate. So more or less they went there and did he say he killed them? Did he say he killed them with a knife? Did he say he killed More or less the type of the type of questions that would be inadmissible in court. Because the correct question from an investigator that isn't a clinical moron like Holeman would be, please tell me what he said. Not checking off some fucking roadmap. Did he say this? Did he say this? Did he say this? Did he say... Jesus Christ. You didn't ask any questions about the history of their monitoring him from the beginning to end, did you? I believe we did, ask about his behavior and things like that. Did you? Do you recall asking them about conversations? Any of these inmate companions about conversation they had with him, aside from the incriminating ones that you mentioned or we're talking about? Could you repeat that again? Yeah, I'm sorry. Do you recall asking any of the inmate companions? Now I believe here they have to talk to Holeman as if he was a toddler, because he's a clinical moron, in my opinion. Do you recall asking any of the inmate companions about any conversation with him, aside from the ones that you were interested in, which is why you went there? Yes, some of them would volunteer that information. Okay. About his behavior and some things that he said other than what's on the logs. Okay. That we were there to talk about, yes. And what you remember is there might have been some guards that told you that he has asserted his innocence in their presence. I don't recall, but I believe I could review those if I would be able to tell you for sure. Okay. So there were officers that went to the prison to interview guards and inmates, correct? Yes. Did anyone ever go up to interview Dr. Waller? No. The psychologist in the case? Nope. I think that is absolute bullshit. Can we prove it? No. Why? Because the people who would write this down are the people who are lying their asses off. Okay, what about Warden Jellypoo? No. Okay, what about the Internal Affairs Officer? No. When you went to the prison, how did you get access? I forget who exactly I would look up in their phone number, and they just called up there and told them I needed to come in there and interview Mr. Allen. And they would put me in contact with somebody. I don't remember the name. I think it was a major, and they would meet me down there and search me and put me through the metal detector and then take me back to wherever I could be interviewing him or other officers in I. Was this the WCU unit where you interviewed these people? Yeah. So you went in the prison and then in what I call mini prison within the prison. Not always, but I've been in. Okay, there. And I've always been in the administrative building. There's a basement. They have an interview room. Did you also do some follow-up investigations based on the things that you heard in some of these phone calls or read in some of these log sheets? Other than interviewing the people that we already discussed? Yeah. Let me ask you a cleaner question. You acknowledge that you listen to these phone calls, right? Some of them. And you heard things that Rick Allen said, right? Yes. And you characterize those things as incriminating, right? Correct. And did you then follow up with any of those statements by going, let's say, to CVS or to contacting a family member of his to further the investigation? Some things, yes. Okay. What do you recall doing? One of the statements we went to CVS to, he made a statement that he used a box cutter and that he had threw the box cutter in the dumpster at CVS. So we followed up on that to make sure to see if the CVS issued box cutters. Okay. And they did. Then we asked where the trash was, but it was obviously too far along that we couldn't locate where that day's dumpster bin was dumped. But we follow up on things like that, yes. And folks, conveniently, very shortly after this box cutter thing occurred was when the medical examiner had a eureka moment and went from 2 different knives in his report to box cutter. Just like that, conveniently. Really fucking convenient. And did they? And they did. We asked where the trash was, but it was obviously too far along that we couldn't locate where that day's dumpster was dumped, but we'd follow up on things like that, yes. So this was an ongoing investigation, right? Even while he was housed at the DOC. If we had any new information, yeah, we would follow up on it. Follow up on it. And did you interview any of his family members or extension of his family based on anything he said at the DOC? No, I don't believe so. I thought I recall that maybe friends of his daughter or something like that might have been interviewed at one point in time. Maybe. I know that we interviewed his daughter and his wife, but I think that was before. Okay. I don't recall. It could be a possibility that we did. So has your law enforcement team extended, I guess I'd probably say hundreds of hours monitoring these phone calls and then reviewing all these log sheets and things that have been created over the course of his day? Is that a question? That was more of a statement. I'm sorry. Did you say I heard, let me withdraw it. I'll ask a new one. Okay, thank you. Has your law enforcement agency expended hundreds of hours, if not more, in monitoring these phone calls and reviewing these logs and statements during the course of this investigation? Yes. Okay. Have you ever been involved in, how long have you been an investigator? Probably 17 years, 16, 17 years at least. Have you ever been involved in a case where an accused was housed in a county jail and there were log sheets generated by officers or staff of that jail? I believe so. Tell me that case. I don't know exactly what case, but I think White County. Most of my investigations would have been White and Carroll and Tippecanoe County, and I know they have log sheets. I don't know if we ever had to access them, and those log sheets would put, what time medication was issued, if there's any abnormal activities and things like that I would be able to review. But you never done that. I've done it. I just don't know exactly what case. Oh, I thought you said a minute ago that you don't think you've accessed them. I think I have. I don't know. Okay. To be honest with you, I know they have them. All right. I'm not sure if I've ever used them or not. I think I have. Are you aware of any circumstance in any of the county jails that you've been associated with in your law enforcement career where they assign other inmates at that jail to monitor and keep record of another inmate? No. A more simple way of putting this is, right, have you ever heard of the companion program in a county jail? No, I have not. Very unique, right? I believe so, yes. No further questions. Miss Diener, cross-examination. At one point, you were asked if you interviewed, and you were making reference to interviews, and you said, interview Richard Allen. You never interviewed Richard Allen, is that correct? I did. At the DOC? Oh, no, not at the DOC. Okay, I attempted to. But you did interview employees of DOC who logged statements of his? Yes. Okay. Isn't it common for law enforcement in certain situations to monitor GTL calls or a similar system when a person's incarcerated and talking about their crime? Yes, very common. And my understanding is typically a person is given access and they don't need to contact someone every time they listen to a call. Is that right? That's correct. So you have a login. You can access this whenever you want. Correct. No other questions. Ms. Rossi? Nothing else. All right. Thank you, Lieutenant. You may step down. All right. That was the end of Arthur Holeman, also known as A.Holeman, in this session. Oh.